Hello, I'm Paul Orselli, and I am super happy to be joined today by Ashanti Davis. How are you, Ashanti?
I'm doing well, Paul. How are you?
I'm well. I know we spoke before we started recording. You're wearing a beret in honor of Bastille Day, so that who knows if that figures into your just one thing, but Ashanti, what's just one thing about exhibits you would like to share with people today?
Oh, how do you choose? How does one choose just one thing? Um, think about this, right? Do I choose one thing from the perspective of someone looking at exhibits and engaging with exhibits, or the perspective of someone developing?
That's the beauty of this prompt. It is yours to use as you see fit.
I love it. So maybe I'll sit in this in-between space. It's kind of that the dual, as someone who views, and I was actually having this conversation earlier today about our buildings and the relationships that we have with our buildings. I am a huge fan of exhibitions and I love them. I love visiting them and seeing all the different ways in which we interpret objects, subjects, and things. But I would say one thing about our exhibitions, especially now, in a time when we are really moving forward into 21st century museums, right? It's only 2022, which means we still have many years to go before we're in that 22nd century, but we really just need to involve our communities in that process of developing exhibitions that are relevant to them, not relevant to us. And no, it's really hard, right? The subject matter is so exciting. Like, I'm a huge space nerd. And I love all things space. But how do we open up that conversation and invite new voices and perspectives into the conversation to talk about how these subjects are relevant to them, not just relevant to us as curators, as exhibit developers, because otherwise we're not going to progress forward. We're not going to support creating spaces that are relevant for all people if it's always just all about us. And arguably, we are doing a better job, but some of us really need to step up to the plate and really lean into the discomfort of somebody else's perspective, especially when it comes to
Well,
exhibitions.
well, I'm happy to have you help us take up that charge. I was going to throw you a little curveball about the James Webb Space Telescope because you're a space nerd, because that's such big news. But we'll leave that aside and just talk more generally. So let's say, Ashanti, that somebody is watching the video and they say, yeah, I agree with that 100%. I'd like to be a museum professional who is more engaged and looking for ways to engage with our communities, or to help my organization and the communities and organizations that are adjacent to us to become more engaged with each other. So what are some good tips from your perspective for somebody who really is motivated for doing that even more than hopefully more than they're doing right now and their institution is doing right now?
Just a little more than right now, right? So I think the first tip, and probably one of the ones that is the most important, and the most important actually across a lot of different perhaps spaces and conversations, and it is slow down, right? Slow down. If we are moving at the speed of light, or if we are moving at the speed of decisions that are happening in our spaces, we're never going to be able to meaningfully connect with people and find out what their interests are or their connections to these subject matters. So first, we have to slow down, and then we have to work with intention, right? So if you want to create an exhibition that is informed by your communities, one, slowing down is going to be crucial because community timelines are not our timelines. Fancy that. Right? We maybe need to get an exhibition in, right? It's got to open on this particular day. But if we really want to involve community voices and perspectives in that process and really work with intention, slowing down means that we might have to start sooner. That date might have to get pushed a little bit further out because we really want to work in with intention. Build relationships. Because it's not just a transactional thing, right? I'm just inviting you into this process because I want to get this thing done. I want you to be a part of this process because I want you to feel like you have ownership over this space. I want you to be able to come back and invite people you know because you're proud of this space that you've created and that you have contributed in mass to. And so those are some things, right? Slow down, work with intention, and really just invite people authentically, right, into that space, not as a transaction, but as a deep relationship. So there's three things. There's three.
So I was going to say, just as an aside, I'm not sure institutional timelines work for institutional staff all the time, but that's just an editorial side. But
Yes.
I'm wondering, it seems like maybe something that is a connecting thread between the three things that you just mentioned and to this broader conversation is the notion of control. So I'd just be interested to get your, in this context, what you might have to say about that notion of control, because I think that seems to often be a big, let's say, perceptual barrier between being more authentic and mindful and, not rushing through engagement with various communities.
Yeah, control is tricky. We are accustomed, especially for what we represent as cultural institutions, we are accustomed to being the decision makers, the person in the position of power, and we absolutely are. No matter who you are, if you're working in a cultural institution, you represent a space that represents a position of power within our, let's say, our broader culture. But that power, and it kind of shows up many ways, that power is the thing that we have to be willing to let go of and willing to share. And it's hard. That's the hard part, right? Because we're accustomed to our timelines and what we have to do in our missions and wanting to achieve that. But communities have goals that they want to achieve too. And they have aspirations and they maybe have missions for themselves. And so being willing to share power, especially in the process of developing exhibitions, right? That perhaps those final decisions that we do have to do those in collective spaces and build consensus. And that's hard because it takes more time. It's going to add more time into a timeline. And you're 100% correct. Our timelines sometimes don't even work for us, right? Always working to the edge. But there are tools out there that can support shifting some of these kind of personalized dynamics, right, that we bring into spaces and really working, I might say, through working with equity and working with the intention to be a collaborator. One of my favorite, if you've not seen this one yet, it is called Liberatory Design. It was developed by the National Equity Project as a collaborative. And so it's mindsets and modes for designing with equity. And in the sense, the designer, anyone is a designer, not just if you are a graphic designer or an exhibit designer. Any person, no matter your medium, you represent a designer. So these are some really fun tools that help a lot of that self-reflection. And so one of my favorite ones, there it is, focusing on human values. Because at the end of the day, right, all of us involved, we are still people. And then there's another one that says, seek relational trust. Let me see if I can find it in here. Oh, that's a good one. Oh, here's that power one, work to transform power. We have to, because otherwise we'll continue to inform the same system that is not informed by equity. Attending to healing, that's always really important because we're still people in this process. And
well, I'm glad you showed those cards because that gives me an opportunity to point down below and say that since this will eventually be on YouTube, we will include references or links that provide additional information related to this conversation. So that's great. That would be super. You mentioned, not to turn this video into a word association video, but you just mentioned another word that seems like an essential word as part of this conversation, which is the word trust. So I'm wondering, again, in the notion of making this practical for people who want to continue to do an even better job in their professional practice and with their organizations, what are some ways that you have found to help engender trust between, let's say, new partners? You know, you really don't know each other yet. So how do you sort of show that you are legit, you are the goods, you that? All right.
Build relational trust. There it is. There is one. So trust is huge. And I think this is a big part of our conversation as cultural organizations, is how we really build trust and create spaces where people are able to come as their whole selves, whether we're working in organizations or whether we are part of community organizations that these major institutions want to work with. That trust is key. And so one thing that I said this in a meeting somewhere, is moving at the speed of trust, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which involves slowing down.
Wow,
Right.
this would be that you've just given a great title for this video.
Moving at the speed of trust.
Moving at the speed of trust. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I like to think that the speed of trust, right, is that process of slowing down. When we're focused on our timelines, when we're focused on we got to get it done, we got to get to the end of the timeline, we don't create those spaces where we're really actually able to connect with other people. So I actually last year, what is this, 2022? It's wild.
Yes.
Maybe it was the beginning of this year. I don't even remember. That's how messed up time is right now. But I got to co-author a chapter with some colleagues in a new book that was coming out through AAM.
We'll put that in there too, in the references.
And, trust is one of the things that we talked about in our chapter, and it is called the goodness, what is our chapter called? It's been such a long time now. The elements of friendship, right? And we were talking about supporting internal communities within cultural institutions, but trust is crucial. Creating spaces where people can celebrate with you, right, your birthdays or major milestones, or really getting to know someone. Like, I asked a really fun question with some partners the other day in a meeting. This is what they wanted. They were like, we want to ask these kinds of questions too. We were like, great. And so we asked a fun question: if you could be any flavor of donut, what flavor would you be?
That's a
Paul,
good
if you
question.
could be the flavor of donut, what flavor would you be?
Well, I see my immediate response, because this is probably the most popular flavor in our household, is Boston cream from Dunkin' Donuts. It's got a filled donut with sort of custard and chocolate on the top. So there's my pick.
Very specific. Mine, I feel like, changes on the day. So in honor of this beret and Bastille Day, I'm going to say a cronut.
Oh, well, there you are.
A cronut,
Very,
and a donut.
Not only fashion forward, but thematically consistent here. That's great. Well, I'm speaking of time, our time has galloped away from us. I feel like we just got started, but that's okay, because as I mentioned, we will include links to Ashanti and her work and some of the references we talked about. But I think I really love the notion of moving at the speed of trust when you're working with communities and you're working with new creative partners. That sounds like a great way to proceed.
Or even just working with your team in your
organization.
Why not?
Heaven forbid that we work at the speed of trust within our own organization. That would be great. Well,
I'll include another one. This is a really cool one, actually. This is called Design to Disrupt. It was developed by a wonderful museum person named Chaya Rabia. And I think she had these at AAM this year, but we'll include that in the link also. This one is specifically, so whereas the other one was designed by a national equity organization, this one was it's an inquiry-based tool, critically reflexive practice in museums. So this one, she was thinking about our spaces, and so we'll include that one in there too. It's a really awesome one to explore, and awesome. She is excited for folks' feedback on it as well.
Yeah, well, we're happy to spread the word there. That would be great. Well, it was awesome to speak with you, Ashanti. Thanks for taking the time, and we'll hope that people who get a chance to see this video and share this video will all move forward at the speed of trust. So that would be awesome.
I love that. Thanks, Paul.
Yep, take care.